The night was humid, and the Lego sky had just finished crying its usual evening tears. Chuka wasn't planning to go out. Not at all. But his head was heavy. Work stress, family pressure, and a lingering sense of loneliness had been weighing him down for weeks. So, on a whim, he dressed up casually in a black polo and jeans and drove himself to a club in Lekki. Not because he wanted to party, but because he needed noise to drown the silence in his heart. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Amaka was in tears. Earlier that evening, she had ended things with her boyfriend of 3 years. She found out he was engaged to someone else. The whole time they were dating. The betrayal cut deep, and no amount of advice from her friends could console her. So when her roommate suggested they hit the club to drink it off, she agreed. But after arriving, Amaka lost the vibe quickly. The music was loud, but her heart was louder and broken. About an hour later, most of the club was buzzing, but 2 people sat alone. One in a corner booth nursing a glass of Hennessy, the other staring blankly into a nearly empty cocktail glass. That was Chuka and Amaka. She wore a short burgundy dress and gold earrings, her makeup still intact, but her eyes a little glassy. Chuka noticed her from across the room. She wasn't dancing like the other girls. She looked like someone who didn't want to be there, just like him. Something about her energy drew him. He stood up and walked over, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his drink. "Hey," he said, trying to be gentle with his tone. "Mind if I sit?" Amaka looked up. She was surprised. He didn't come with the usual swagger or drunk confidence most guys carried in clubs. He looked calm, almost peaceful. "Go ahead," she said, motioning to the seat across from her. For a few seconds, they just sat there. No music, no lights, no loud crowd could penetrate the quiet between them. "I'm Chuka," he said. "Amaka, what's a beautiful girl like you doing in a place like this? Looking like she doesn't want to be here." She chuckled, bitterly, trying to forget someone. Chuka raised his glass. "Me too, except I'm not forgetting a girl. I'm forgetting everything else." She tilted her head. "Oh, bad day, bad year," he replied. "But sitting here now, it feels like maybe it's about to get better." That made her smile, her first real smile of the night. They talked for over an hour, about everything and nothing. Work, childhood, love, pain, and random things like their favorite jollof recipe or why suya tastes better at night. The music thumped louder than Amaka's thoughts, but not louder than the ache in her chest. She had been sitting at the club bar for nearly an hour, swirling the straw in her second cocktail. Her face was slightly flushed, her words coming out faster now, slurred around the edges. Chuka, now sitting across from her, watched quietly. He hadn't come to babysit anyone, but there was something about the sadness in Amaka's eyes, something painfully familiar, and he couldn't ignore it. "And then he had the nerve to tell me I was too emotional," she ranted, throwing back another gulp of her drink. "Imagine, me, emotional, after 3 years of lying to me." Chuka nodded slowly. "Sounds like you gave him too much of your heart." She pointed at him, swaying slightly. "Exactly. Too much. And for what? So he could marry someone from his church and tell me God said she's the one." The bartender returned. "Another," she snapped, pushing her glass forward. Chuka leaned forward. "I think you've had enough for tonight." She narrowed her eyes. "You sound like him. Don't be like him." He raised both hands in surrender, managing a soft smile. "Fair enough. One more. But I'm drinking with you this time." She smirked. "That's better." They clinked glasses. As the next drink settled in, Amaka's tone shifted. Her laughter got louder, her eyes more glazed, and then suddenly, her expression dropped. "I'm tired of people taking and leaving. I just want to stop thinking." Chuka's smile faded. He leaned in gently. "You're allowed to feel like this. You're human." Amaka looked at him for a long second. Then, with a sudden burst of reckless boldness, she said it, blurting the words like they'd been sitting on her tongue for too long. "You know what? Take me home. Touch me if you want. Do whatever. I don't even care anymore. I just want to feel something. Anything. I'm tired of being numb." Chuka blinked. The air between them shifted, But instead of responding with excitement or impulse, he sat still. She reached for his hand across the table, but he gently pulled away. "Amaka," he said quietly, "I'm not that kind of guy, and I don't think you really want that. Not like this." She scoffed. "You don't want me? It's not about want," he said, lowering his voice. "You're drunk. You're hurting. I respect you too much to take advantage of that." For a moment, Amaka's face twisted with confusion. Then something softened. She didn't expect that response. Most guys would have said yes without thinking. She leaned back, tears filling her eyes. "I don't even know why I came here tonight." Chuka reached into his pocket and placed some Naira notes on the table. Then he stood and walked to her side, offering his hand. "Come on. Let me get you home safely." She stared at him, broken but relieved, and finally nodded. The ride home. The car ride was quiet. Amaka slumped slightly in the passenger seat, half asleep, occasionally murmuring things like, "He lied to me," and "I'm so stupid." Chuka just kept driving calmly, carefully. He glanced at her once and whispered, "You're not stupid. You're just human." Chuka adjusted his rearview mirror and glanced at Amaka. Her head now tilted against the window. He said softly, "Where exactly is your house?" She stirred, muttering something about, "Turn left after the red building with the coconut tree," then added, "Or was it? Wait, maybe it was after the fuel station?" Her speech was slurred, incoherent. She was far gone. He sighed gently. "Amaka, what's the actual address?" She didn't reply. She was now half asleep, mumbling about how men are the same, how she hated everything, how maybe it was better not to feel anything at all. Chuka drove slowly, torn for a moment. He could have called her phone to reach her roommate, but she hadn't unlocked it, and she didn't even remember her password anymore. He glanced at her again. She looked small now, fragile. Someone who had laughed and cried and lashed out all in one night, and now just wanted peace. He made a decision. To his place. He pulled into his compound in Lekki, opened the gate, and parked the car. Carefully, he came around, opened the door, and helped her out. Her steps were wobbly, her heels unsteady. "I'll carry you if you fall," he said softly. She chuckled sleepily. "You're not like other guys. I don't know why." Once inside, he led her into his room. The only room with clean sheets and a working fan that night. She sat on the edge of the bed, then collapsed backward. Chuka grabbed a blanket, covered her gently, and turned to leave. "Where are you going?" she murmured, barely audible. "To the couch. You need rest." She didn't respond. She was already drifting. Chuka stepped out quietly and lay on the living room couch, trying to settle his thoughts. It was a weird night. Emotional, messy, unexpected, but somehow meaningful. He stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly. What was it about her that got to me so quickly? He wondered. He had just closed his eyes when he heard footsteps. Light, hesitant. She came to him. Amaka stood by the doorway, wrapped in the blanket, her hair messy, her eyes tired but clear enough now. "I can't sleep," she whispered. Chuka sat up. "Do you need water? Or anything?" She shook her head. I don't want to be alone." He didn't move at first. "Amaka, you're still tipsy. I think you need to rest." "I know what I'm saying," she replied. "I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to lie beside me. Just hold me, please." Her voice cracked at the end, and in that crack, Chuka heard a pain deeper than the alcohol, deeper than the heartbreak. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't seduction. It was loneliness. He stood up slowly and walked toward her. "I'll stay," he said quietly. The night of silence. They lay down together on the bed, the fan humming above them. Amaka turned toward him, resting her head on his chest, her fingers gripping his shirt like a child afraid of the dark. Chuka didn't try to kiss her, didn't caress her or take advantage of the closeness. He just held her. Amaka lay with her head on Chuka's chest, the blanket loosely wrapped around her. Her fingers traced small circles on his shirt. She shifted slowly. He turned to her, his eyes calm, uncertain. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she whispered. her lips barely moving. "You're not alone," he replied softly. "I'm here." She looked into his eyes, searching, longing. Then she kissed him, started slow, hesitant, as if she was unsure whether she wanted to feel or forget. But the kiss deepened, and her hand moved to his face, pulling him closer. Chuka stiffened. His body responded, but his mind was conflicted. "Amaka," he muttered between breaths. "I don't think this is a good idea. Not tonight. Not like this." But she held his face. "Please," she whispered. "I want this." He looked at her, truly looked at her. Her eyes were begging, but not with lust, with desperation. "I want to forget," she said. "Just for one night. Let me feel something that's real, not pain." She sat up slowly and let the blanket fall off her shoulders. She took off her dress without looking at him, as if peeling off the weight of her past. She reached for his hand and placed it on her skin. "Touch me," she said. "Please, Chuka. Just make it quiet in my head." He hesitated. He wasn't a man who made impulsive decisions. But there was something about her vulnerability, raw, unfiltered, and unhidden, that made him want to protect her, even from her own hurt. And so, in the haze of emotion, confusion, and desire, he gave in. Their bodies moved with a quiet desperation. Not fast, not wild, but aching and unsure. He hadn't come with protection. She didn't ask. She only held him tighter, and when he finally entered her, she closed her eyes and turned her head away, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about passion. It was escape. After. When it was over, the silence between them was louder than anything else. Chuka lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, the weight of what just happened pressing down on his chest like a stone. He could hear her trying to muffle her sobs. He moved closer and wrapped his arms around her from behind, gently pulling her in. "I'm sorry," she said through the tears. "I didn't mean to cry." "It's okay," he whispered. "Let it out. I just wanted to feel something that wasn't betrayal." "I know." She turned and buried her face in his chest, crying harder now. Chuka stroked her hair, kissed her forehead, his heart pounding. "What have I done?" he thought. She was drunk, not herself. I should have protected her from even this. But it was too late. He didn't know what this meant for them. Didn't know if she'd hate him in the morning. But one thing he knew for sure, that night would stay with both of them for a long, long time. Not as a romantic memory, but as the night everything changed. The morning sun crept through the curtains, soft and golden, casting light on the room where everything had changed. Amaka stirred first. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself still in Chuka's bed, wrapped in the same blanket, her head resting on his chest. The warmth of his body, his scent, and the gentle rhythm of his breathing all reminded her that the night before was not a dream. She looked up. Chuka wasn't sleeping. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling, his jaw slightly tense, lost in thought. Amaka shifted slightly. "Hey!" He turned his eyes to her slowly. "You didn't sleep?" He shook his head. "Barely." She sat up. "Talk to me. What's wrong?" Chuka sat up too, running a hand over his face. I feel like I took advantage of you last night." Amaka's brows furrowed. "What? No, Chuka. You didn't. You were drunk, vulnerable, and hurt. I shouldn't have. But I wanted it," she said firmly, cutting him off. "And I still do. Last night wasn't just about my ex or the pain. It was about you. The way you held me, listened to me, made me feel safe. That was real." Chuka sighed, unsure. "It just didn't feel right after. I kept thinking, what if you regret it?" Amaka leaned closer. "Then let me show you I don't." She reached for his hand, placed it on her waist, and whispered, "Let's do it again. Let this time remind you it came from my heart, not a drunk moment." Chuka hesitated again, but this time, something in her eyes, clear, sober, and honest, gave him peace. He leaned in, and just like that, they kissed again. Not desperate this time, but deep, slow, and intentional. This time it was different. Their bodies moved in sync, with clarity and confidence. Chuka held her close, his hands exploring every inch of her with gentleness and control. And Amaka? She moaned his name, gripping the sheets, eyes shut tightly. Don't stop, she whispered again and again. He didn't. This time wasn't escape. It wasn't confusion. It was want. When they finally reached the end, Amaka lay back, breathless, sweat clinging to her skin, a slow smile spreading across her face. Chuka lay beside her, chest heaving, equally breathless, a look of wonder and confusion still etched on his face. That was, she started. He nodded. Yeah. She rolled over to him, resting on his chest again. No more guilt. Okay? I wanted it. Both times. I believe you now, he said softly, kissing her forehead. Time to go. Eventually, reality returned. Amaka sat at the edge of the bed, sliding her dress back on, her hair now wild but beautiful. I should go, she said quietly, before my roommate starts calling the police. Chuka chuckled. Let me drop you. She smiled and nodded. Okay. On the way out, he asked, can I get your number now? In case fate doesn't throw us into each other's arms again. Amaka laughed. You're lucky I believe in fate. She typed her number into his phone and saved it as Amaka. That night, on the drive to her apartment, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was calm, curious, like two people who knew something had started, even if they didn't know what would come next. When they got to her gate, she turned to him. Thanks, Chuka, for everything, for the safety, the honesty, and the sweetness. He smiled. Anytime. She leaned over, kissed him once more, soft, slow, and sure, then stepped out. He watched her walk in before driving off, her scent still on his shirt, her voice still in his ears. That was no ordinary night, he told himself, and this isn't over. As Chuka's car disappeared down the street, Amaka stood for a moment at her apartment gate, the early morning sun brushing gently against her skin. Her dress was rumpled, her hair still carried the chaos of the night, but her face was different. She looked lighter. She walked slowly into the compound, still barefoot from taking off her heels in the car. A subtle smile played on her lips, not from lust, not even joy, but something in between relief. She pushed open the front door, trying not to make too much noise, only to find her roommate, Lillian, wide awake on the couch, arms folded, eyes fixed on her like a mother about to interrogate her teenager. You're just coming back? Lillian said, eyes widening. Amaka Chitara. I was about to call the police. Amaka chuckled as she tiptoed in. Sorry. I'm fine. I'm really fine. Lillian stood up and stared at her. You left this house last night like a mad woman, crying, shouting, saying you wanted to scatter something. Now you're walking in like someone who just had breakfast in heaven. Amaka laughed again, throwing herself onto the couch. Because, maybe I did. Wait, what happened? Lillian asked, sitting beside her. You look like you fell in love and fought war at the same time. What did you do? Amaka looked up at the ceiling. Lillian blinked. In the club. Yeah, his name is Chuka. He came to sit beside me when I was drinking like a fish and talking nonsense. You were talking nonsense before you left the house, Lillian added dryly. I know, Amaka admitted, giggling, but he was different. He didn't try to take advantage. He listened. He took me home. Home? His home. Amaka bit her lower lip, nodding slowly. Yeah. Lillian's jaw dropped. Amaka, before you shout, Amaka said quickly, holding up her hand. He didn't force anything. In fact, he tried to sleep on the couch. I went to meet him. Lillian blinked, still processing. We were together. Intimately, Amaka said more softly now. But I wanted it, not just because of my ex, but because, for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone actually saw me. Lillian leaned back and exhaled. So now what? You're glowing. But you also look like you're trying not to cry. Amaka paused, her smile fading a little. Yeah, I still think about the betrayal. I mean, I gave that guy 3 years of my life, and he threw it away like it was nothing. That wound doesn't just disappear overnight. She looked down, playing with the edge of the pillow on the couch. But Chuka, he didn't fix me. I'm still broken. But he made the pain pause for a bit. And that means something. Lillian nodded slowly. Wow, that's a lot for one night. It was a heavy night, Amaka said, then looked at her friend. But for the first time since the breakup, I didn't feel small. Do you think he'll call? Lillian asked. He has my number, Amaka said softly, then smiled again. And honestly, I hope he does. She stood up and stretched, her dress falling properly back into place. But whether or not he does, I don't regret it. Not any of it. Lillian stood too, placing a hand on her shoulder. Just take it slow, okay? Don't fall for a rebound. Amaka nodded. This doesn't feel like a rebound. It feels like a beginning. Later that day, back in her room, Amaka finally showered, dressed in clean clothes, and lay on her bed. She scrolled through her phone. No missed calls yet. No message from Chuka. For the first time in a long time, her thoughts were not consumed by her ex. He still hurt, yes, but he no longer controlled the way her heart beat. Someone else had taken up space. Gently, unexpectedly, and without force. And deep down, she wanted to see him again. The day crawled by slower than usual. Amaka had checked her phone at least 10 times that afternoon. She hated that she was acting like this. Anxious, hoping, wondering if last night was just a moment or the beginning of something real. She didn't want to seem desperate. She didn't even want him this much. Not yet. But he had gotten under her skin. She sighed and tossed her phone aside again, only for it to vibrate in her palm almost instantly. Unknown number. Her heart jumped. She picked up immediately. Hello? She said quickly, trying to sound calm. Hey! Came Chuka's familiar voice on the other end, warm and deep. Did I call at a bad time? Amaka's lips slowly curved into a smile. You called at the perfect time. He laughed gently. I've been thinking about you all day. She sat up. Yeah? I've been wondering if you were going to call. I wasn't sure if you needed space, he said. But I realized I didn't want to give you too much space and lose my chance. Her smile widened. I was thinking, would you like to come over this evening? We can talk. Maybe eat. Just chill. Amaka hesitated only for a second before answering. Sure. What time? I'll pick you up by 5. True to his word, Chuka was waiting for her at her gate, leaning casually on the side of his car. Amaka stepped out, wearing a soft lilac top and jeans, minimal makeup, and her hair tied back. She looked simple, but Chuka couldn't take his eyes off her. You clean up nice, he said, opening the door for her. She smiled. So do you. The ride was quiet but comforting. When they got to his apartment, she made herself comfortable on the couch as he brought her a glass of juice. After a few minutes of light conversation, Amaka turned serious. Chuka? She began softly, sitting upright. Can I ask you something? Anything. She looked him in the eye. What are we? He didn't look surprised. In fact, he nodded slightly, as though he'd been waiting for her to say those words. This is exactly why I brought you here tonight, he said gently. To talk about that. She raised a brow. I want to be clear with you, Amaka. I don't do flings. I don't use people to fill a space. And what happened between us? It wasn't random to me. You matter. He reached for her hand and continued. I want you to be my girlfriend. Officially. Let's see where this can go, with honesty, with care, with intention. Amaka was quiet. Her chest rose and fell slowly. The room suddenly felt heavier. Not in a bad way, but with the weight of real emotions. I won't lie, she said. That night, it gave me something I didn't know I needed. But I'm scared, Chuka. I just came out of something that wrecked me. I'm not sure I have the strength to pour my heart into someone again only to get hurt. I understand, he said softly. And I'm not asking for all of you at once. Just a chance. We'll go at your pace. She looked at him for a long second, her eyes soft but guarded. I don't want another heartbreak. You won't get one from me, he said. Not if I can help it. There was a pause. Then she smiled. A chance, you said? He nodded. A real one. She squeezed his hand. Okay, let's try. Slowly. The beginning of something real. They didn't kiss right away. They didn't rush into passion. That evening, they sat side by side, sharing their childhood stories, laughing about random things, and talking about real-life fears. Rent, work, heartbreak, healing. For the first time in a long while, Amaka didn't feel like she was waiting to be abandoned. And for Chuka, being around her didn't feel like pressure, it felt like purpose. Whatever they were building was still fragile. But it was real. And real was all either of them wanted. That night in Chuka's apartment, after the honest talk and emotional confessions, there was no rush, no urgency, no physical expectations. They both changed into comfortable clothes. Chuka offered her one of his t-shirts, which hung loosely on her frame, and they curled up on the couch, wrapped under a throw blanket. He held her gently, one arm around her shoulders, the other resting behind his head. Amaka's head was on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. There was comfort in the silence. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The room was dim, the only sound coming from the quiet hum of the standing fan and the occasional car outside. I haven't felt this safe in a long time, Amaka whispered into the darkness. Chuka smiled and kissed the top of her head. You deserve to feel this way every day. They stayed like that for hours, no kissing, no touching beyond holding. Just warmth, presence, and peace. Eventually, they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms. That night wasn't about desire. It was about trust. Months later, 3 months passed. The days turned into routines, video calls, voice notes, and weekend visits. When Chuka wasn't swamped with work, he was calling Amaka. When Amaka wasn't planning events, she was thinking about him. They never rushed anything. And slowly, Amaka's walls began to lower. But even as she laughed more, healed more, and loved again, the memories of her past still found their way in sometimes. There were nights she would lie awake, remembering how she gave 3 whole years of her life to someone who didn't deserve her. The betrayal still stung, even if the wound had started to scar over. One evening, as she folded laundry in her room, her roommate Lillian walked in with a bottle of malt and a smug smile. You're thinking again? Lillian said, dropping onto the bed. I always think, Amaka replied, folding a shirt and setting it aside. About him? Lillian asked. Amaka paused. Sometimes. I still can't believe I wasted all that time. Lillian tilted her head. Is it really a waste though? Amaka looked at her. You loved someone. You gave your heart fully. That's never wasted. And besides, you found someone new. Someone that truly values you. Do you know how lucky that is? Amaka sighed, sitting beside her. I know. Chuka is everything that man wasn't. Kind, present, consistent. But sometimes I just feel cheated. You were, Lillian said bluntly. But look at you now. Some girls go through breakups and stay single for 3 years. You healed and got a boyfriend who actually wants to be there. Amaka smiled. You make it sound like I won a lottery. You kinda did, Lillian said, raising her malt. To fresh love and no more time wasters. Amaka laughed and raised an imaginary glass. Amen. Meanwhile, with Chuka, that night, Chuka sat on his bed, scrolling through pictures on his phone. One photo made him pause. A selfie Amaka took in his hoodie, smiling with her bonnet on, face bare but beautiful. He stared at it for a while, smiling to himself. She was slowly becoming home to him. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He was ready to love her through it, at her pace, with patience, and with all his heart. It was a warm Saturday evening in Victoria Island, Lagos. The city was alive as usual, honking danfos, soft jazz leaking from restaurant speakers, and lovers taking strolls by the ocean breeze. But Amaka barely noticed the outside world. She was seated across from Chuka in a cozy, softly lit restaurant tucked in a quiet corner near Lekki Phase 1. The dinner had been his idea, no occasion, just a way to spoil her small, he had said with a grin. She wore a simple black dress and soft curls that framed her glowing face. Chuka sat opposite, wearing a crisp shirt, his eyes never straying far from her. They talked and laughed over peppered snails, grilled chicken, and coconut rice. He kept sneaking glances at her as if he couldn't believe she was really his. Then, somewhere between dessert and the second glass of wine, Chuka leaned in and smiled. "I want to ask you something," he said softly. Amaka paused, her spoon midair. "Okay." He tilted his head. "How would you feel if I asked you to marry me?" Her eyes widened, and she burst into a surprised laugh, almost choking on her wine. "Marry?" she repeated. "As in wedding bells and aso ebi?" Chuka chuckled. "Yeah, as in forever." Amaka looked at him for a long moment, her smile still lingering. "Don't you think it's too quick? It's only been a few months." He shrugged. "Do you want me to wait 3 years like he did?" And just like that, his words hit a nerve. Her smile faded slowly, replaced with thoughtful silence. She looked down at her hands resting on the table. For years, she believed time equaled commitment, that the longer you stayed, the deeper it meant. But her ex stayed for 3 years and still left her heart shattered without remorse. Chuka? He came into her life like a whisper, quiet, calm, unexpected, and in just a few months, he had listened to her fears, respected her boundaries, wiped her tears, made her laugh again, and taught her that love could be gentle. It was then, at that dinner table under soft yellow lights, she realized, it's not about how long you've known someone, it's about who they are. She looked up, her voice tender. "You know what, Chuka? For the first time, I'm not afraid to imagine forever. Not because we've spent years together, but because I finally met someone who loves me the way I deserve." Chuka reached for her hand, gently rubbing his thumb across her fingers. "That's all I need to hear." She smiled again, this time without fear.
"Don't propose tonight."
"But maybe don't wait too long either." He grinned. "Noted. I'll give you some suspense." They both laughed, and for the rest of the evening they didn't talk about rings or timelines. Just two hearts sitting at the same table, beating in rhythm, knowing that something real, something lasting had begun. After dinner, they returned to Chuka's apartment. The air was cool and quiet, the city's noise now distant and irrelevant. Amaka walked in first, slipped off her heels, and turned to find Chuka watching her. His eyes soft but intense, full of emotion he could no longer hide. She smiled. "Why are you staring at me like that?" He moved closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Because I'm still trying to believe you're real." She looked up at him, her heart already fluttering. "After everything I've been through, I never thought love could feel like this." And without another word, they kissed, slow and deep. A kiss that carried every emotion they couldn't say aloud. Their clothes came off piece by piece, between laughter and kisses, touches and whispers. There was no rush, this time with intention, with clarity, with love. Chuka took his time, holding her like she was something sacred. Amaka moaned softly beneath him, her fingers digging into his back, her body responding to every movement, every touch, every word he whispered against her skin. It wasn't just sex. It was healing. It was the kind of connection she hadn't felt in years. Not even during the 3 years with her ex. When they reached their peak and collapsed beside each other, breathless and tangled in sheets, Amaka turned away slightly and let silent tears fall. Chuka noticed. He pulled her gently into his arms. "Hey, are you okay?" She nodded against his chest, then whispered, "I've been missing this feeling, of being wanted, of being seen, of being loved. It's been a long time." Chuka kissed her forehead and whispered, "You'll never have to miss it again." The proposal. The next morning, soft sunlight poured into the room. Amaka stirred, her body still tingling with memories from the night before. She stretched and opened her eyes slowly, expecting to find Chuka still asleep beside her. But the space next to her was empty. "Chuka," she called sleepily, rubbing her eyes. Then she sat up and froze. He was on his knees, right there in front of her by the bedside, dressed in a simple white shirt and gray joggers. holding a small velvet box. Inside it, a sparkling ring. Amaka's mouth opened, but no words came out. Chuka, he smiled nervously. Before you say anything, hear me out. She blinked, still trying to process what she was seeing. You told me last night, not now. And I heard you. I respected that. But I also heard something else. In the way you looked at me. In the way you held me. In the way you let me in. She covered her mouth, stunned. So, I thought, why wait for the perfect timing when I already know you're the one? He took a deep breath. Amaka Chitara? Will you marry me? She stared at him, her chest rising and falling. Chuka, she whispered. I told you not now. He smiled and said softly, no, you said not last night. This is this morning. Her lips trembled, half shocked, half amused. She laughed, shaking her head, still in disbelief. You're mad, she said with tears in her eyes. Madly in love, he replied. She exhaled deeply, then looked down at him, the man who never pressured her, never made her feel less, never ran from her pain. And in that moment, there was only one answer. She nodded, smiling through tears. Yes. Chuka slipped the ring onto her finger, stood up, and pulled her into the warmest hug she had ever felt in her life. They held each other tight, both smiling, both crying. It wasn't just a yes to a proposal. It was a yes to healing, a yes to new beginnings, a yes to forever. Amaka stepped into the apartment, dazed with joy, the ring on her finger still glinting in the sunlight. She closed the door gently behind her, leaned on it for a moment, and smiled to herself. Her heart was full not just with love, but with disbelief. Was this really happening? Just then, her roommate Lillian emerged from the kitchen, still in her bonnet and slippers, holding a half-eaten chin pack. You slept out again? Lillian said, raising a brow playfully. This Chuka guy is turning you into wife material already. Oh. Amaka didn't say a word. She slowly raised her left hand and wiggled her fingers, the ring catching the light perfectly. Lillian's jaw dropped. Weigh in it, Amaka. Amaka laughed, nodding excitedly. He proposed this morning, on his knees, right after we woke up. On his knees, in the morning. And you're just telling me now? Lillian dropped the chin, her voice rising in excitement. Amaka grinned. It's real, Lils. I said yes. This calls for a celebration. Lillian shrieked. Where is the wine? She dashed into the kitchen cupboards and emerged seconds later with a cold bottle of red sweet wine and 2 glasses. She popped the cork dramatically, and the fizz echoed through the apartment. To Amaka, my best friend, my bride-to-be, who finally found the man that sees her, Lillian said proudly, raising her glass. Amaka raised hers with teary eyes. And to you, for always holding me up even when I wanted to fall. They clinked glasses and sipped, laughter and joy filling the room. I told you, Lillian added, settling beside her. The right thing happens at the right time. That guy who wasted your 3 years? Forget him. Chuka came like a miracle. God's timing is not just perfect, it's dramatic. They both burst into laughter again. From that moment, everything moved quickly. Within a week, Chuka had met Lillian officially, and she playfully warned him, if you break her heart, I'll scatter your tires. He laughed and promised, she's safe with me, forever. They informed their families next. Chuka's mother was overjoyed, saying she'd been praying for a gentle daughter-in-law, while Amaka's parents were a little stunned but ultimately supportive when they saw how happy their daughter had become. They chose a date 3 months away. Chuka didn't want to wait, and Amaka, though nervous, felt peace about it. She was ready. Venue bookings, asoebi colors, food tastings, and bridal fittings filled their weekends. Lillian was the automatic maid of honor, and she took her job seriously. You're going to be the most beautiful bride Lagos has ever seen, she declared as she helped Amaka pick out her gown. Through it all, Chuka remained her anchor. Steady, supportive, never complaining, even when Amaka stressed over flower arrangements or cried over fabric choices. Countdown to forever. As the wedding drew closer, Amaka would sometimes lie in bed at night staring at her ring, smiling to herself. How did something that started in a club, on a night she had sworn off love, lead to this? But then again, love never shows up on schedule. It doesn't care about past timelines, broken expectations, or wasted years. All it takes is the right person. And for Amaka, that person was Chuka. In just 3 months, she would walk down the aisle, not just as a bride, but as a woman reborn. As their wedding day drew nearer, everything between Chuka and Amaka became more intense, including their affection. The stress of wedding planning was real, but their bond had never been stronger. Every glance, every kiss, every quiet moment felt deeper than the last. They had grown comfortable with each other, body, heart, and soul, and it showed. They were constantly touching, holding hands in traffic, hugging in the kitchen, stealing kisses in the middle of bridal fittings. When they were alone, it was like the world disappeared. Sometimes it would start with just a cuddle in the evening, a soft kiss on the shoulder, fingers tracing down the spine, and then it would become something more, passionate, consuming, gentle but deep. There were days they couldn't help themselves. 3 times in a single day. And still, they weren't tired of each other. Amaka would laugh afterward, curled in his arms. Are we even going to make it to the wedding at this rate? Chuka would smile, kissing her forehead. We're just rehearsing for married life. When the wedding finally came, it was magical. The ceremony was held at a serene garden venue, filled with white roses, dancing lights, family and close friends dressed in their best. Amaka walked down the aisle in an elegant gown, her face glowing, tears brimming in her eyes. Chuka couldn't stop staring at her. Not just because she looked stunning, but because he still couldn't believe this woman had chosen him. Their vows were raw and sincere. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. And when they kissed as husband and wife for the first time, it was like sealing a story written by grace itself. Their first week as Mr. and Mrs. After the wedding festivities, they disappeared. No elaborate honeymoon abroad, no sightseeing schedules. Just the two of them in a quiet, cozy beach house Chuka had secretly arranged in Badagry. They turned off their phones. No visitors. No noise. Just rest. Just love. Just them. They slept in, woke up late, made breakfast together in the kitchen with music playing in the background. He would tease her when she burned the toast, and she would laugh and flick water at him. And yes, they made love almost every day. Sometimes slow and lazy under the sheets while rain danced on the windows, other times urgent and playful in the kitchen or the shower. But always with meaning, always with closeness. They weren't rushing through it. They were exploring each other, physically, yes, but also emotionally. Talking, laughing, sharing dreams, making promises. Every day felt like the continuation of a long, sweet conversation that started the night they met. We have forever. One evening, as they lay under the covers, skin against skin, Chuka traced the line of Amaka's collarbone and whispered, "Do you remember how broken you said you were?" She looked at him with a smile. "I still carry the scars." "Yeah," he nodded. "But you're shining through them." She kissed him softly. "Because I finally feel safe." Chuka held her tighter. "We have forever, and I'll spend it loving you this way, over and over again." And in the soft quiet of that night, Amaka knew, no matter what her past had been, this love was home. It was a calm Saturday morning. The sun filtered gently through their bedroom blinds, and Chuka was still snoring softly when Amaka slipped out of bed to use the bathroom. She had been feeling off for a few days, nausea in the mornings, dizzy spells, and a sudden aversion to fried eggs. Her instinct whispered, check. She opened the drawer where she had quietly kept a pregnancy test from a pharmacy run 2 weeks ago, just in case. She followed the instructions, her heart thudding in her chest as she waited. Then the 2 lines appeared, bold, unmistakable, pregnant. Her breath caught. She stood still, staring at it, smiling but shaking, unsure whether to scream, cry, or laugh. So many emotions rushed in at once. Chuka was going to be a father. She tiptoed back into the room and stood by the bed, still holding the stick in her hand. Chuka blinked himself awake and looked up at her. What's wrong? He asked, voice husky from sleep. She smiled and whispered, Wake up, Daddy. He frowned in confusion. She handed him the test. He sat up quickly, rubbed his eyes, then looked at the stick. Twice, 3 times. Then, slowly, his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. No way, he said, looking up at her in awe. You're serious? Amaka nodded, and the tears finally came.
I'm pregnant, Chuke.
He stood and wrapped her tightly in his arms, lifting her off the ground as she laughed and cried all at once. We're going to have a baby, he whispered. I can't believe it. The months rolled on. Their home was filled with more joy, baby names scribbled on notepads, prenatal appointments, cravings at 2 a.m., and sweet kisses on Amaka's growing belly. Their love remained strong. But one thing began to shift. Their intimacy. In the early months, nothing changed. If anything, Amaka was more playful, more needy, and Chuka was more attentive than ever. They would still make love, soft and slow, always followed by belly rubs and whispered promises to the baby. But by the time she entered her second trimester, and her belly began to round more visibly, Chuka started pulling back. One evening, after dinner, Amaka reached for him as they lay in bed. She kissed him slowly, trailing her fingers down his chest like she always did. But this time, Chuka gently stopped her hand. Babe, maybe not tonight, he said softly. She looked at him. Why? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't want to hurt you. Or shake the baby or something. Amaka blinked, then laughed gently. Chuka, you can't shake the baby. I'm not a bottle of juice. He chuckled nervously, but the worry still crept into his eyes. But your belly is getting big, and I don't know if I'm being too rough. What if I press on you too much? Amaka leaned over and cupped his face. Listen to me. I'm okay. We're okay. My doctor said it's safe. The baby is protected in there. You won't hurt me. He still hesitated. She added in a whisper, I still need you. This body is changing so fast. I just want to feel beautiful, desired. He kissed her forehead. You're always beautiful to me. But even with her reassurances, Chuka began to tread carefully. His instincts to protect her and their baby overpowered his usual passion. Amaka tried a few more times, teasing him, sitting on his lap, whispering in his ear, but he'd always shake his head with that same apologetic smile. I want you, he would say, but I want to keep you safe more. Eventually, she stopped trying. Instead, they focused on the little things. Longer cuddles, forehead kisses, warm baths together, and lying side by side with his hand on her belly, feeling their baby kick. And somehow, even without sex, their bond grew stronger. One night, as they lay in bed, Amaka whispered, Do you know I love you more now than ever before? Chuka turned to her. Even though I'm starving you? He teased. She laughed. Even with that. He kissed her gently. This is temporary. As soon as baby comes out, you're finished. Finished? She raised a brow. Totally, he said, grinning. You'll beg me to rest. She giggled, eyes sparkling. We'll see about that, Daddy. The house was quiet, the nursery freshly painted, tiny onesies neatly folded, in the wardrobe, and baby wipes stacked in every corner like treasure. Amaka was 9 months pregnant, her belly large and round like a perfect moon. With just a week to her due date, everything was ready except her patience. It had been weeks since she and Chuka had been intimate, and though she respected his caution and tenderness, she was starting to feel restless. That evening, after dinner, she walked into their bedroom wearing one of his oversized shirts, the only thing that still fit her comfortably. She found him folding baby socks on the bed. Daddy, she said softly, slipping behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. Chuka turned and smiled. You okay? She nodded, then pressed a slow kiss to his neck. I need you tonight. He hesitated, his hands frozen mid-fold. Babe, your due date is in 7 days. That's 7 days too far, she said with a playful pout. It's been long, and I'm tired of waiting. I feel like a stranger in my own body. Please, Chuka, I need to feel close to you again. Just once, before the baby comes. He stared at her for a long moment, seeing the longing in her eyes. Not just physical, but emotional. She needed reassurance, comfort, love. He sighed and cupped her face gently. Okay, but gently, slow, just like you like it. And he kept his word. That night, under the soft hum of the AC and the faint lullaby from the baby playlist playing in the background, they made love. It was slow, deep, careful, emotional. Amaka whispered his name through every touch, every movement. And when it was over, she cried quietly, not out of pain, but relief. You don't know how much I needed that, she whispered, resting her forehead against his. He kissed her lips. You'll always have me, even when you're 90 and wrinkled. They laughed quietly, wrapped in each other, unaware that life was about to surprise them much sooner than expected. The next day was busy. Amaka had an appointment with her tailor for her postpartum outfits and decided to quickly go on her own while Chuka ran some errands. Are you sure you don't want me to take you? He had asked, holding her belly. I'll be fine, love. The tailor's place is just 10 minutes away. I'll drive slow, she said with a kiss. She got into her car, already feeling energized after a peaceful night. But halfway down the road, at a small junction, her car sputtered and stalled. Ah, not today, please, she muttered, trying the ignition again. Nothing. After a few failed attempts and calling a mechanic who said he wouldn't get there for another hour, she made a bold choice. I'll just take a bus. She crossed the road slowly and boarded a commercial bus headed in the same direction. Inside the bus, she found a spot by the window. She smiled at the woman beside her and settled in, placing her hand on her belly. But 10 minutes into the ride, something changed. A dull, low pain started building in her lower back. She shifted uncomfortably, brushing it off as another Braxton Hicks contraction. But then it came again, sharper this time. And again. Then, a warm gush of fluid suddenly soaked through her dress. Amaka froze. She looked down, breath catching in her throat. Her water had just broken. Oh God, she whispered, panic creeping in. Amaka grabbed her phone with shaky hands and dialed Chuka immediately. He picked on the second ring. Hello, babe. Chuka, she cried. My water just broke. I'm in a bus. I think the baby is coming. Chuka didn't speak for a second. Then came his voice, sharp, focused. Where are you now? Tell me exactly. The bus erupted into commotion as soon as Amaka cried out that her water had broken. Passengers began shifting, murmuring, unsure of what to do. But then, from the back of the bus, a calm voice cut through the noise. Everybody relax. I'm a midwife, a woman in her late 40s, dressed in a simple Ankara blouse and carrying a nylon bag, pushed her way gently toward Amaka. She knelt beside her, eyes scanning Amaka's face, then her soaked clothes. You're in labor, but it's okay. Okay? Just breathe. My name is Mama Ikit, and I've delivered more babies than I can count. Amaka, sweating and groaning in pain, looked up, her eyes wide with fear. I'm not ready. It's not even my due date. Mama Ikit gently held her hand. Shoo, baby doesn't care about due dates. Baby's ready, and so are you. We just need to get you somewhere safe. She turned to the driver quickly. Oga driver. Hospital. Find the nearest one now. Yes, ma, the man said, stepping hard on the gas. As the bus sped down the road, Mama Ikit stayed by Amaka's side, rubbing her back, coaching her through the pain, helping her breathe. You're strong. I know you are. The pain will come like waves, but just breathe with it. Don't fight it. Amaka squeezed her hand through each contraction, whimpering as the pain intensified. Call my husband, she gasped, handing Mama Ikit her phone. The midwife nodded and called Chuka using her own calm voice. She's in labor. We're heading to Living Grace Hospital on Ojodu Road. Come quickly, but don't panic. The moment the bus pulled up at the small private hospital, 2 nurses ran out with a wheelchair. She's crowning, Mama Ikit shouted as they helped Amaka off the bus. Everything moved in a blur. White walls, fluorescent lights, nurses shouting instructions, gloves snapping, the sound of her heartbeat on the monitor. They wheeled her straight into the labor room, with Mama Ikit following closely, still holding her hand. Amaka was drenched in sweat, crying, screaming, pushing. She didn't know where Chuka was. She didn't know what time it was. All she knew was that she was about to become a mother. "You can do it," Mama Ikit whispered. "You're almost there, baby girl. One more push." With one final cry and all the strength left in her trembling body, Amaka gave the biggest push she had ever given in her life, and then, there it was. A sharp cry, loud, alive, perfect. Her baby had arrived. A nurse lifted the baby up, wrapped in white cloth, and placed the child on her chest. Amaka burst into tears. A mix of pain, relief, and overwhelming joy. "It's a boy," the nurse said, smiling. She looked down at her son. His face scrunched up, eyes shut, fists waving in protest, and all the pain melted away. 10 minutes later, Chuka stormed into the hospital, breathless. His shirt half-buttoned, panic all over his face. "I'm looking for my wife, Amaka Chitara. She came in from a bus." The nurse smiled. "Relax, sir. Your wife just delivered a healthy baby boy. Come, follow me." His knees nearly buckled from the shock. "She what?" "She gave birth. Everything went well. Follow me." He rushed behind the nurse, barely feeling his legs, until they opened the door to the room, and there she was. Amaka, tired but glowing, her hair a mess, lying in bed, with their son in her arms. She looked up at him and smiled weakly. "You missed it." Chuka stood frozen in the doorway. Then slowly his eyes welled up. He walked to her side, leaned over, kissed her forehead, then looked at the baby. "He's beautiful," he whispered. "He looks like you," she replied. Chuka kissed both of them, again and again. "I'm sorry I wasn't there." "You were right on time," Amaka whispered. And in that quiet hospital room, with their son sleeping between them, the two of them held hands, forever changed. Their journey had begun in the most unpredictable way. But now, the real adventure was just beginning. The next day, they were discharged from the hospital. As Chuka helped her into the car, carrying their tiny baby boy in a soft blue blanket, Amaka kept looking down at her son, still amazed that this was her reality now. The drive home felt surreal. She looked out the window, watching the city blur by, but her mind was deep in reflection. Just a little over a year ago, she was crying over a man who ghosted her after 3 years of empty promises. Now here she was, a wife, a mother. When they pulled up to the house, she stepped in slowly, the scent of home filling her chest. Chuka had already set up everything. The crib, diapers, a little welcome note by the door that read, "Welcome home, Mama and baby." She paused in the hallway, held her baby to her chest, and whispered, "God, thank you. You really turned my shame into joy." That evening, as Amaka sat in the living room breastfeeding her baby, her best friend Lillian came through the door with a squeal and a gift bag. "Where is my baby?" Lillian yelled as she dropped her bag and rushed in like an excited auntie. Amaka laughed. "Shoo, he just slept." Lillian lowered her voice dramatically and tiptoed toward the crib to peek at the sleeping boy. "Ah, he's so tiny, so fresh. His nose even looks like Chuka's." Amaka chuckled, rubbing her eyes. "I'm still trying to believe this is me." Lillian turned to her with a proud smile. "You're doing it, babe. You're living the life you cried for." Amaka looked up at her, eyes soft. "Thank you, Lils, for dragging me to that club that night. If I didn't go, I'd probably still be stuck in that useless relationship." Lillian flopped beside her on the couch. "Me that literally forced you to wear makeup and leave the house? I should be your chief bridesmaid and godmother to this child." Amaka laughed deeply. "Honestly, I used to think I'd never recover from that heartbreak. I thought maybe I wasn't meant to be loved right. But you kept reminding me I deserved more. And now look at you," Lillian said. raising an invisible glass. Married to a man who adores you, and a baby that already owns your heart. Amaka nodded slowly, holding back tears. It's crazy. Say me that one man wasted 3 years of my life. I thought that was love. But now I know what love really feels like. Patient, kind, steady. Lillian smiled and reached for the gift bag. Well, guess what? What? It's your turn to attend a wedding mine. Amaka's eyes widened. Stop playing. Lillian pulled out a wine-colored invitation card and waved it. Proposal came last week. Weddings in 4 months. And I'm counting on you to plan half of it. Amaka jumped up, hugging her with one hand, the other still cradling the baby. I'm so happy for you. Lillian smiled against her shoulder. Now we're both walking into this next chapter. Together. Chapter What Healing Looks Like. That night, after Lillian left, Amaka sat quietly by the crib as her baby slept. The room was dim, the only light coming from the soft night lamp. Chuka walked in and wrapped his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking about? He whispered into her ear. She leaned her head back on his chest. How far I've come. He kissed her gently. You've come so far, and you haven't even seen your best days yet. Amaka looked down at her baby, then at her ring finger, then at Chuka's strong hand holding hers. And in that moment, she smiled to herself. Heartbreak didn't win. Love did. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.